Hello and welcome to this broadcast from the Times of India. We're tracking the top news stories of the day, especially the top political stories of the day. With me here is Sanjeev Singh. Sanjeev, it's a pretty hard political day today. The Augusta debate, of course, is still going on in Parliament. But the four things we're going to be looking at today is the Uttarakhand judgment, which is coming from the Supreme Court today. We're going to be having the floor test in the floor test in the State Assembly in Dehradun on the 10th of May. We'll be tracking the ban on diesel cabs in Delhi and the fallout of that. Also, we'll be going down south looking at the election.
Yes, of course. Jayalalitha, she's her manifesto's out, so that's pretty interesting, especially in a state where she wants to come back to power for the second time, and that's something that hasn't happened for almost 3 decades in that state.
Yeah, and also we'll be looking at something which is very, very dear to both our hearts, the issue of prohibition in Bihar, or actually the lack of it, which is very dear to both our hearts. We'll be looking at, it's exactly a month now, I think, since Nitish Kumar imposed prohibition, and it seems sales of alcohol are going up in all the neighboring areas, isn't it, Sanjeev?
Yeah, especially my state, UP, people seem to be very happy because they've seen a huge spurt in liquor sales going up. And that's good news for Akhilesh Yadav because he seems to be wanting to sell more alcohol in his own state.
And the thing, coming back to Uttarakhand, I mean, this is an important political story, not just because it's important for Uttarakhand, of course, but I think it's also particularly important because it's become a sort of test case for this BJP Congress shadow play that we are seeing. We saw a president's rule in the northeast first, in Arunachal, now in Uttarakhand. We've seen a seesaw legal battle with the High Court giving a particular judgment, the Supreme Court stopping it. So this is the result of this floor test is going to be very important for both parties, isn't it?
Well, of course, and my heart goes out to Harish Rawat's heart because he just becomes the chief minister, then he's again gone, and then he now again with the floor test, his hopes of becoming a chief minister again risen. So that must be quite a seesaw for him.
I think, Sanjeev, what's also really at stake here is that on the one hand, Harish Rawat has been accused of doing a lot of horse trading, of using his power and his clout to buy MLAs. On the other hand, the BJP has been accused of using the centre's power to take over a state government. So in that sense, there's a lot more at stake here than just a state government. Let's just look at what's actually going to happen. When is the floor test going to happen now, Sanjeev?
It's going to happen on the 10th of May, and for 2 hours, President's rule will be lifted from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on the 10th of May. So that's the time that they've given.
So I think it's also very important to remember is that what's really at the heart of this is those 9 rebel MLAs whose defection from the Congress is what caused this entire crisis in Uttarakhand. So let's see how these numbers stack up. The Uttarakhand Assembly's effective seats are 70. Actually, it's 71. One of them is a nominated member, so he's not going to vote, so it's 70. That means halfway point is 35. Now let's look at what the numbers are currently like. You have the Congress. The Congress has 36 MLAs. 9 have been disqualified. 36 minus 9, effectively 27.
Yes.
What is the BJP strength, Sanjeev?
They have 28 MLAs, but one member has been a dissident and has been helping the Congress in the past. So 28 minus 1, they are also
effectively 27.
Yes.
I think it's Bhim Arya
yeah. Yes.
And then the BSP has 2 or 3.
Yeah. So BSP plus UKD is 2 plus 1. That's 3.
3. BSP plus UKD is 3, and then the independents are also 3.
Yeah.
So essentially, these two categories, this is really important. 3 independents and 3 from other parties, BSP and the UKD, they are likely to support the Congress. That means the Congress numbers go up to 27 plus 3 plus 3, 33. The halfway house effectively is half of 61, which is going to be 31, which means the Congress currently, given the current state of play, is likely to get ahead. And if that happens, it's going to be quite embarrassing for the BJP.
In fact, the 9 MLAs of the Congress, they were very crucial in BJP's scheme of things.
Right.
And that is why the whole floor test happened, because if you remember that the main reason why we are seeing this crisis in Uttarakhand was simply the fact that the BJP insisted that, the finance bill has not been passed, the appropriation bill has not been passed, and because these numbers were against
which Arun Jaitley said in Parliament has never happened in the history of India. It's a trampling of Indian democracy.
Yeah, so that's it. Well, so at the moment it looks like advantage Congress, but we'll have to wait and
Yeah,
see.
because I think this is a major one, because if Harish Rawat wins this, his government was down and out before the president's rule was imposed. This was a really bad. There was a government that was facing lots of questions about governance. If he wins, he will get the chance to play the victim's card with just a year to go for the next election. So this is an important one. Let's switch to our next topic, which is the big one on diesel cabs in Delhi. I think for the last few days, all of us who work in the National Capital Region have been having real issues coming to work and going back home, because the cab drivers have been protesting. How many diesel cabs have gone off the road, Sanjeev?
Well, as far as the Supreme Court order is concerned, there are at least 30,000 diesel cabs, which will have to go off the roads. But what we've seen is that both governments, be it the center or the state, they want this norm to be relaxed, because right now the Supreme Court says that you can only use CNG cabs.
Now that's a real big one, because there are all these guys who's, yes, everybody cares about the environment, but all of these guys are going to be out of jobs, and unless you create something alternative for them by court diktat, it's rather unfair, isn't it? Somebody must have spent their entire life saving on buying these taxis. What's going to happen to these guys?
Yeah, but you see, I mean, the court has said that this is not the first time we're giving this order. I mean, way back in 1998, they had given the order that, all forms of public transport, be it buses, taxis, or three-wheelers, they should switch to CNG. So initially they had, but there were a lot of practical issues, and, the government obviously didn't follow up as much as it should have.
In 1998, the last Supreme Court order.
Yeah, so in a few years' time, you went back to what it was originally. And that is why, this whole problem has been created. Now, what the center is saying, that they want a 5-year period in which they want to do this, but of course that 5-year period, of course, is too long according to experts.
So the real problem, Sanjeev, is that courts have been giving orders, as far as I can see. Governments have not implemented them, and as a result, people have been suffering. Now, whether it's taxi drivers, whether it's average citizens who suffer from the pollution, that's the real problem.
Yeah, in fact, when I used these cabs, a lot of people said that, why couldn't they tell us earlier that they want these cabs to go off? So what happens to the livelihood of these people? And the government is caught in a bind, because this is not the first time that the courts have said that we gave you enough time. So that actually puts these people in a spot.
Also, interestingly, I think this is one of the few issues in which the Delhi government of Arvind Kejriwal and the central government are on the same page. At a time when Mr. Kejriwal is sort of going after the Prime Minister on his education degrees as well, and virtually on everything.
Yes, and interestingly, the other the other point that the center has raised about these cabs, they've spoken about the BPO industry, and they've said that if we actually impose this, then there is fear that we lose the BPO industry market, which is valued close to about $1 billion. So that is interesting, because
I heard there was, I think the court had said, why can't CNG buses be used to drop BPO workers, to which that's not really practical and feasible, is it?
Yes, that's right. But then again, a few BPO companies have actually, made arrangements, but it's not possible for all of them to do that.
But also, a lot of it is about women, and these BPO companies, they take care to drop women right to their doorstep, and a lot of places the buses just can't go into the narrow alleyways and gullies and gully kuchas of Delhi.
Of course, it is a practical problem. So, in that sense, of course, we may see the Supreme Court actually giving them some time, but of course, 5 years is a long time, and considering the way we've seen odd even being implemented despite all criticism, we need to come up with more innovative ways.
So let's move to our to the next big story we're tracking here at the Times of India, and that is the big gravy train of sops that's unfolding in Tamil Nadu. Jayalalitha, the great Amma of Tamil Nadu, has issued a poll manifesto 2 weeks after the DMK put out its poll manifesto, it's full of a whole number of doles, if you like. There is free cell phones to ration card holders. There's going to be subsidized mopeds and scooters to women at 50% costs.
Wow.
There's going to be 40,000 crores of loans for farmers.
That's a big sum.
And there's going to be 100 units of free electricity for every 2 months. at the same time, married women who are marrying are going to get a certain amount of gold as well. So it's she's saying I'm like your mother and I'm going to provide you everything. That's what she's basically saying. She announced this in Erode from the hometown of Periyar, who is the founding father of the Dravidian movement. I think what's your first sense at looking at the kind of money and the largesse that's being splattered around by the ADMK, at least in what it's promising?
I think it's quite well thought out because stuff like look at the aspiration of the youth these days. We talk about free mobiles, and you're talking about discount on scooters for women. Now that is a huge section.
May I add also the maternity leave for women she's promising will go up from 6 months to 9 months, and that's pretty good, I think.
Yeah. So if you look at it, what Nitish Kumar has managed to do in Bihar with the alcohol ban, he says that the women voters have appreciated it. Amma is looking at the women voters in the state.
So that's the key point. I think what Amma is trying to do is to look at women voters, as Sanjeev rightly said, but she's also looking at first-time voters, young voters. As far my sense is that the opinion polls, which in the beginning, about 2 or 3 months ago or a couple of months ago, were showing Amma very clearly in the lead, they have been showing some fluctuation of fortune in the last couple of weeks, which is why she's delayed her manifesto for a little bit longer than normal. She's looking at first-time voters. She's promising far more than what the DMK is promising. There've been 2 polls in the last 2 weeks in Tamil Nadu, particularly in South Tamil Nadu. One of them puts the DMK ahead, one of them puts the ADMK ahead. So she's responding to. It's very much like Mamata Banerjee's situation, where all the polls are showing the incumbent ahead, but with a reduced majority from before.
Yeah, they're a bit circumspect. Also, why the AIDMK is a bit more excited or let's say positive about the election is the leadership factor. I mean, the DMK, the opposition DMK has not exactly put up a great picture by projecting, Mr. Karunanidhi. I mean, he's on a wheelchair, so
90 years plus.
Yeah, so that sort of thing. If he had seen someone like an MK Stalin, things could have been different.
My sense is that the 2 things. One, the Tamil Nadu election is not that different from the West Bengal election, where there's no great overarching theme. Like in 2011, the great overarching theme in West Bengal was Parivartan. In Tamil Nadu, it was corruption of the DMK. This time, there's no great overarching theme in both these states, but really it's about local issues. And the DMK is facing a real generational change. And with Amma, she's facing anti-incumbency. She's going to get over it. But and we haven't put down, Sanjeev, here the promise of free power. And that's been interesting because I think the Tamil Nadu Power Board is currently facing a debt of 80,000 crores. So how is she going to fulfill that promise?
Well, I mean, it's not the first time that some politician has promised something despite the state being in the red. But the point that we were talking about, if she's actually targeting the women vote, the young voters, the first-time voters, and farmers by free power, she's actually trying to build a constituency for herself which does not identify with a 90-year-old man. So that could be smart politics.
And also, and this gives us a cue to go to our next topic, which is prohibition in Bihar. But just one last point on Tamil Nadu. The DMK is promising full prohibition in Tamil Nadu, which seems to be a fashion, I think, among India's politicians currently. Nitish Kumar is backing it. All kinds of other politicians also backing it. But so let's take a look at. It's never worked in India before. It's not worked in Andhra Pradesh before. It doesn't really work in Gujarat. At least, everybody knows that you can find alcohol much more easily in Gujarat than you can in other places. But it's 1 month of prohibition in Bihar. What's your sense about it, Sanjeev?
Well, you see, Nitish Kumar says that crime has come down by 27%. But, the problem is that we don't look at alcohol as a health issue. We look at it as a moral issue. That's the way Nitish Kumar is looking at it. So what we've seen is
as a women's issue.
Yeah. So what we've basically seen is that Bihar is going to make a loss of at least 5,000 crore.
Right. Annually. Because of this. And this money is all going to go in some form or the other. Some will go into illicit liquor, which will be sold in the state. And the other will go to the neighboring states, right?
Which is UP.
So the sales of liquor there are really increasing, isn't it, in your home state including?
Yes, Bengal. Then
So basically all the thekawalas in these neighboring states must be blessing Nitish Kumar.
absolutely Jharkhand, and don't forget even Nepal.
So the point is that this kind of a prohibition ban doesn't actually bring down alcohol consumption. It actually drives it underground, deprives the state of a lot of excise duty, and it allows a lot of spurious guys to come into the market.
Yeah, so if you see that, if we go by whatever figures we have, a state like Jharkhand is witnessing amazing sales. I mean, 9 out of 10 of the districts which border Bihar,
This is Jharkhand.
yes, in Jharkhand, their sales have spiked almost 300%.
Wow. In 1 month.
Yeah, at some places. Similarly for UP. In UP, districts like Balia, Gazipur,
So again, similar spikes of 200-300%.
yeah, so they are very happy. So what's actually happening is that by stopping people arbitrarily, you're not actually dealing with the problem. That money that you would have saved, Bihar anyways is quite a poor state. It's a underdeveloped state. They could have used that money or done some sort of a ban in phases. But you're just helping other states.
Right. So I think that's about all that we have for today. We've
Another
gone through-
point,
Yeah. go on.
Nalin, sorry to disturb, that I'd like to make is that, in Parliament the question was asked, so their figures came out that almost 20% of the samples that were tested of alcohol were found to be adulterated.
Right. Where was this?
This is across the country.
Right,
Across the
okay,
country,
okay.
adulterated or, misbranded.
So this is random testing of alcohol
Yeah,
from
yeah.
thekas and all that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Ironically, in Bihar,
Hmm.
out of 13-20 cases that were tested, I repeat, only 7 were found to be adulterated.
Right. So Bihar is actually getting more pure alcohol. Or
They were
that's
getting
what
pure
you're saying.
alcohol, and yet they have to go through a ban.
Right. So I mean, I think the larger point is that prohibition as a policy has always been a very emotive policy in this country, but practically it's never worked anywhere, not just in India, but anywhere in the world, including in the United States. So it's a sexy thing to do. It seems like a moralistic thing to do. Politicians, it's an easy vote catching device for women, but not always the most practical thing to do.
Yes, and what we've seen that politicians just blindly seem to be offering prohibition in states like Tamil Nadu, in Kerala.
And to be fair to Nitish, though, he did say in his manifesto that prohibition was one of his poll promises.
Yes, he's fulfilled his promise, but I'm sure there were more other scientific ways of dealing with this problem.
Right. Well, thanks so much, Sanjeev. That's all from Sanjeev and me here for this edition of this broadcast from the Times of India newsroom on the political stories we are tracking. We'll come back soon with more political stories right here from the TOI newsroom.